I mean, look, it's not even that much. I was going through like a little mental calculation of how much of the content I consume, just information general wise. It's only a tiny little bit. It's stuff from books, and I go back to some old YouTube videos, but probably 95% have been published in the last month in terms of YouTube stuff as well. Music, I don't know if I can. Some of that is like older stuff as well, but I listen to a lot of newer stuff. But in particular, maybe let's start on the books and then we can. So in particular, for those who haven't joined on the Mere Models Book Reviews channel, I do probably 4/5 of them. So for every 4 I do one does one. And the general theme of that is I tend to pick older books that have at least 2 decades. There's no real, that's more of a thing that's just popped up, as in that's what I was doing. And then I realized, like I'm actually trending more towards the older stuff. And the reason for that is actually what I touched upon in one of the latest book reviews, which was on this history book. And so that was The Square and the Tower by whatever his name, Neil Ferguson, I think. And that book was, first of all, what a random history. Like Bitpunk FM was a guy who recommended it to me because I was talking about some open source projects and different types of, not governance, but the like regulations and things like this. And then he's like, oh yeah, you might be interested in this. It's about hierarchies. And I was like, all right, sure. I'll give it a shot. Hierarchies versus networks. And it was just weird. It just seemed, it certainly like was on the topic of networks and hierarchies, but the history presented in there was just chaotic. It was just everywhere. I didn't see a message nor meaning in it. But that was fine. I learned a little bit of interesting history facts. Germans tried to convince some Muslims in World War I believe it was, to like create a it's not a fatwa. What's it called when they like are like asking for a caliphate or trying to spark up a revolution? There's a particular Islamic word for it. I can't remember. Anyway, I just thought that was really interesting. I was like, the Germans were actually like kind of buddy-buddy with the Ottoman Empire. I vaguely knew that, but some of the details were cool. But then he was just talking about the recent history, and it was particularly Donald Trump. And then he's like throwing out jabs at PewDiePie for being
this was towards like kind of the end of the book.
Yeah, just these one-off little snippets where I'm like, I know that's wrong. I've watched a lot of PewDiePie. He's not an anti-Semite. Like that's so fucking stupid. Wall Street Journal should be ashamed of themselves for the coverage they did of that. And whatever you think about Donald Trump, like he gets into a bit of that, and it's like, okay, well, like I don't really care about this, but Russiagate, he was talking about that, which from what I'm aware of, I tried looking into that as well. And this is the thing, I think the recent history books, a lot of recent books, especially if they're on modern topics, so politics, particularly politics, but chuck in religion there, chuck in news, chuck in war, chuck in technology even. It's not about the actual topic itself. It's people aren't addressing like facts of this happened and then just extrapolating from that. It's more about here's my opinion, and then it's related to this thing.
Yeah, like kind of connected, but I'm leveraging the fact and not actually speaking about it, but just telling you my opinion. That's kind of on the side point.
So just for example, the Russiagate thing, which was that Donald Trump colluded with Russians to rig the 2016 election in his favor by having social media posts organized by Russian bots to influence the sway of Americans. Blur, like big fucking thing right there.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, it's almost a decade since then. Maybe I can sort this out now. I can have a little bit of a look. It's that's history now. But I went on news places, I went on Reddit, I went on a couple of different places, and I could not figure out if this how much validity was still there to this. People were still arguing on Reddit about this as of a month ago. And I just go like, well, how can I even know? How can I even figure this out? And it's kind of like, do I need to figure this out? Is it that important? No, not really. Is it going to affect my life at all? Certainly not. So I should probably just stay away from the whole topic. And so that I kind of translate that into recent news, for example, as well. So it's almost like a pragmatic thing, because I don't trust in my ability as well to be able to sort out people's opinions
discern from being full reality to actual fiction. By the way, my mic is back on and working.
Yeah, did you turn it off? It was
I'm not sure. I'm not sure it wasn't. I don't think I switched it off, but
it was coming through before.
I've been confirmed that it's coming through okay. Good. So, similarly on my side, to be honest, in terms of, I guess unlike Kyrin, from a book's perspective, I do keep the focus on. I have trended not to go to older books, but in newer books. I think that's more so with the individuals that I also listen to on a more current basis and want to get the most current information on X topics. And it isn't to say that it's not found in older books, for sure. And for a large amount of times, they are just rehashing older information, older stories into their own format, which I like. But it does pose a problem, as you correctly say, that opinions can become much more easier to, I guess, interject in the subject, because the test of time would have drawn out a lot of those things. If there was a book that was done 200 years, I'm sure there was a book that was done 200 years ago about some very current topic, whether it be political or something of that nature, probably most people just don't know about it, because over time, one, its relevancy just became less so. The importance of the information is no longer relevant, and three, maybe it was opinion based, and that opinion just isn't valid now, centuries later. So there is more difficulty, I would say, in some of the books, I guess, and general information that I consume now, because who is to say that that actually is just going to be absolutely useless, not going to be relevant? Something like sperm wars in a few years' time, and actually, you just learn that and put that information in there for nothing.
Yes, that's a formative one that I keep talking about. Sperm Wars is a book I read, which was about, you'd think it's the most fact-based thing ever. Biology of humans and contraception, why we make mating choices, how those mating choices affect our, I suppose, more our decision making, and the book's arguing that things like an orgy on the beach of a group of hippies that leads to a pregnancy, you can go down the steps and find those decisions were actually all kind of driven by mating choices, and in particular like the different types of sperms. And then there's talk about blocker sperms, which I always imagine one, fucking kamikaze sperms, all these different types of ones. And when I read that book, this was in a phase of, I don't know, I was reading stuff like The Red Queen by Matt Ridley, which is all about evolution. I was learning about memetics. I actually have read the book where meme was invented as a word, Richard Dawkins. I think it was The Selfish Gene, where he came up with that. And so I was going through this whole phase, and I'm gobbling all this stuff in. I'm like, oh, okay, wow, this is really interesting. And then find out just years later, that book was one of those ones which it comes across as fact, but it was actually a dude just coming up with a lot of fun analogies, and there wasn't the science behind these actual different types of sperm stuff. It's not correct, or not the truest.
I guess in that example, they would have brought this book together. That doesn't sound like a book that was brought about by opinion, though.
Correct. So I imagine that this dude's like, this is the most up-to-date science. We've got some scientific studies to back this up. I'm pretty sure he would have had links to those in the index at the end, or whatever he had there, or recommended further reading. and this is also a critique of, I guess, like of science, which is science is really good. It's an amazing method for figuring out what's reality. Probably up until like 20 years, with a 20-year lag or something. Because, the latest breakthroughs in science, a lot of that is just unrepeatable stuff that were just one-off flukes or people doing fraud and manipulating the data, manipulating the studies. They got lucky, they got unlucky, whatever you want to call it. They had an agenda, so they were driving it, selective. Another good book on this was the one related to, was it called Bad Science? I can't remember. And it was related to how the scientific studies were manipulated to show different things. And so in particular, smoking's good for you. Or it's like, well, at least it's not bad for you. And then you go, okay, no, that's not so good. I'm pretty sure there's some ones out now about how, carbs, fat got a really bad rap in the, what would you call it? Maybe the late 20th century. Yeah. Eggs in particular, so much cholesterol and things like that. Now the trend is shifting towards like fat good, carbohydrates bad. Is that the truth as well? I don't know.
What's the final say? And just in information in general. And again, part of it, the reasoning why I wanted to bring this up as a podcast as opposed to just a little throw off comment that we had last week was, for me, in practice, like actually in reality, what does that mean in the stuff that I like to consume? Because going back to if you have a book out there or just information, again, that it's just pure opinions, and you can, I guess I haven't personally sought out those type of books, but I'm sure there would be. And there's other information sources like that are really opinion-based. I'm going to stay away from them generally as much as possible unless I have validated or verified the individual that it's coming from to a point where I go, yeah, you know what, I know where this person's values and info and ideas are coming from. Okay, I'm willing to understand their opinion of where they're coming from, separated to the facts that might be in play. What does that look like? So my example, someone like Tim Ferriss, either through some of the books that he has created in the past or in hearing a podcast or maybe even in person or in conversations, if he was to display an opinion, I feel like I have enough validation points around the place where I go, okay, I will listen to that opinion. I'll hold it loosely, but I'll take that in as much as I may be taking some facts. Seems good. I've validated that. Where might I not do that to an individual? Either people who I don't know, like just random people that I don't know, or there's particular influences beyond what you're seeing that can create something. This happens all the time in meme coins, right? So a Hawktua coin, if there was an opinion of someone who was saying, or that they themselves, like, you should buy this because I'm going to look at doing all of these great things. From a mile away, I could have told you that particular opinion is fraught with danger. Even if it had succeeded, statistically, from what I've seen, this is going to get crazy. Like, I don't want to deal with any, nor do I want to listen to opinions about the topic of that. Leave it well alone. But there are some circumstances where I will absorb an opinion through very, very select few individuals or entities I've kind of gone, okay, they pass the test. But in general, I will lean towards more fact-based books and that just present the information as is. Generally if there's any opinion or synthesizing of information or anything, it's very directly to what the point of the fact of the story that's being told. I find a lot of the books that I've read over the last couple of years, the ones that I really, really enjoy, are generally they're like what you'd call under the self-help book / science. And the ones that I rate the highest are the ones where there's a lot of fact or science present. There's not a lot of opinion, but there's a lot of story usage from the past to bring relevancy to that particular point. And so in that, kind of similar to maybe some of the books that you read, the best case for this is Ryan Holiday's books. There's a hell of a lot of stoicism and plenty of stories from 100 to 1,000 years in the past where he'll go, topic, attribute, skill, this is the comparison, this is the idea, I've presented it here in front of you, here's my opinion on it. but it's all kind of encapsulated nicely and like, okay, cool. It's kind of cemented against a story or an idea. He's not putting some hardcore opinion. There's some backing behind it. The ones where I've seen myself not disgusted, but disliking that, although I have been disgusted by one book, which is the Book of Versace. And I couldn't even say that was just like opinion of just shit. But some of the other books that I have disliked, I've gone, no, I can see the opinion coming through. I can see that you're stating something, and there is this one in particular I'm thinking about, Dave Asprey's one. There is science out there. Like there was science, or you could point to articles kind of similar to sperm webs where they might go, yeah, look, this thing here that we've gone and done shows this, but there's a difference between, I guess, something saying like, oh, this is what it shows, this is what it could do, whereas he was very militant on, this proves you cannot have beans, they're killing you. Yeah. I go, that sits real badly on me where maybe here's my other tip as well. Often opinions sit as more extremes, you know? And you'll hear it from us when we talk about it on the podcast. Sometimes we'll sit on some extreme of whatever idea you think. That's very much an opinion. And it would do as well to like be very clear if it's a, you know, very strong held opinion, if we have a backing behind it, like what's our reasoning behind it. Because if I would be just as annoyed if I was listening to someone else and they gave an opinion and maybe I didn't know them that well and they didn't prove where like the backing of that came from, I'd go, nah, I don't trust this guy. Like where is this information coming from? So it also made me reflect and go, where am I also placing opinions, just in the same way that I absorb, where am I also placing opinions and thoughts that I go, unless you know me, I'm probably not giving you enough, you know, security and backing as to where that idea has germinated from.
Yeah. Ryan Holiday is a good example because he's touching on stuff. It's more his are more artistic choices in terms of I'll put this story in this way. This is what is generally known about, you know, X Stoic. Here's some of the things he did in his life, and you can present it or contrast it with other ones. And then, you know, he's literally just writing some facts about this dude's life, probably providing some quotes, and then translating that into a more modern context, something like that. Another book that I'm reading at the moment, and one that I'm finding fantastic, is Devil Take the Hindmost, which is about financial speculation and doing a very similar thing. He's looking at periods of the past, tulip mania, South Sea bubble, 1920s, roaring 20s, stock market in the US. I'm about midway through, so there's going to be more. And he'll provide snippets of like, this thing happened, you know, stock market facts, stock market rose or declined by X amount between these dates. Here's some, you know, newspaper article quotes, things that came out like this. And then it's more the narrative that he constructs around it and of what I would call facts, and in particular, impartial facts. You could take each sentence out of that book, and I think it'd be very hard to argue that unless you're just in a nitpicking, arguing mood. But then he's able to create a really compelling story around it. I'd say it's mostly, although there can be some humor, and he'll crack a joke or two in the, you know, saying this person did this, and then look what happened 5 years later. Isn't that kind of funny? Or it's kind of, there's kind of some mirth in it. He's not. I don't get the feeling he already had a point and then was just trying to drive it home. He was more like, okay, there's this thing called speculation. It's happened in the past. I'll go dive deeper into the researches, do all the stuff that I personally don't want to do. I don't want to read newspaper articles from the 1920s. I don't want to try and go to the Dutch archives and find out like what the fucking price of tulips were in the 1600s, 1700s, whenever that was. So it's one of those ones where it's like, you can also see this with people. Two people I really like, Andreas Antonopoulos and Eric Voorhees, who talk, that's kind of how I learned about cryptocurrencies and blockchain from. Eric Voorhees is very mild-mannered. I don't think I've ever seen him speak with compassion or anger or empathy, you know, these real high and low emotions. He's very monotone, but he presents things in a real strict kind of factual way, which I find really compelling. Andreas Antonopoulos, on the other hand, is very emotional, and it's funny because I like agree with him about the things that he's saying, but I'm also kind of wary of him because I'm like, he's a good communicator, and because he is using a lot of emotions here, the facts might not be as rock steady, or if he distorts them at all, it's more likely to go under the radar because I'll be more entranced with his why he's railing against governments and the regulations and things like that, which is generally something I tend to agree with. So yeah, it's you can see that in book form a lot of times as well, like you're mentioning with Dave Asprey. There was another one I read. It was in my shit book list of books I never got through, where it was a dude who was just, he'd throw something out and be like, here's this statement, and then here's like additional, and it was a statement, it wasn't a fact because it was based on so for example, I think he had a commission report from the United States about like media consumption or something like that. So it was a government report, which is probably the least scientific thing you're going to find out there. And then it's like, this was the findings, therefore, there can be no argument against this. And you're just like, that can be an argument. There's a lot of
written in law. It's law right there. Yeah, it's hard. Well, this is where it leads me to, and I guess the first part of this convo today, my little conclusion when it comes to something on books, which is a bit weird. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm starting to approach a point currently, so we're in 2024, and honestly, the way that I would say I would consume information, I think you mentioned this at the beginning, I would say my book information, and by how would I like break it down? I guess by the amount of knowledge that I'm absorbing through book form, let's just say on a weekly basis, is probably 2%. 5%. It's very, very low. Why? We've talked about this before in terms of bit of information, videos, podcasts, all that sort of stuff. That for me has just become like a gigantic amount of the way that I absorb things. Books is very, very minute to that. And part of it really started thinking, okay, and by the way, I probably didn't lay this out as well. I'm not much of a fiction reader. Very much not much of a fiction reader. Have I read fiction books before? Yeah, and for sure I did enjoy, but there hasn't been any call for me to go and read some fiction books. In general, if I guess my mind trends towards, damn, if I'm putting time into some books, it's generally high investment in time. I want it to be maximizing my knowledge that I can take. Granted, you can get a lot of that from fiction books as well. There's a lot of interesting things that can come up out of it and ideas. Maybe this will change in a couple of years, but right now I'm not reading any fiction books at all. And so mine are non-fiction, generally in the health space, scientific space, or in like a self-help mind perspective, all of those sort of regions. And man, part of me really goes, shit, I think the books that I have currently or that I have read, I think I'm going to get better investment of time in just rereading some of them as opposed to going and reading any new book that is out there. Because, and I say this just in the context of self-help and sometimes the health aspects, is so you'll largely go and find other books that are same but different. But the books that I have right now, for whatever reason, I've really enjoyed. I've taken out a lot of learnings from it. Rereading is probably going to give me more benefit in what I'm attempting to do than going and buying the brand new book, 21 Ways to Become a Self-Made Trillionaire with Hosky. I don't know, something to that effect, right? Like I go, rereading Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday is giving me more bang for my buck than going and reading a brand new book on the same concept, given that I've already validated how good this particular book is. And there is, as always with all books, you will absorb a lot of ideas and thoughts, but every time you reread it, I can personally vouch for this because I've reread Man's Search for Meaning multiple times, you will not get this vast amount of knowledge, but you will get the repeated reminder of what made it so special in the first place.
Sure. I've got a couple more things, but let's do Boostagram Lounge and then...
Yeah. That was just my first little summary of that section, because I want to talk about there's a couple of other things as well. Boostagram Lounge. So that is just a chance for us to thank the folks out there, the mere mortalites out there who contribute and send through some boosts or satoshis for us.
Yep. Or even monetary support. Because there's someone else I want to shout out, actually, from the book review channel. So
okay. Do you want me to call out the book review channel?
No. Do our ones first. So meremortalspodcast.com/support if you want to support the show. We very much appreciate it, and it's your continued support that keeps us this and the lights on and the audio on. If one remembers to do it, we'll actually. I'm gonna get you to redo a thing right at the end so that I can insert it into the front, so it's not just a fucking weird, shitty intro.
Unbelievable. Yep. But no Bootstrams this week for us.
Okay. All right.
So that's why I was saying everyone to call out the book review one.
Yep. So we did get support from, let me bring it up here, Vratislav. How would you pronounce?
Slavs?
No. I'm going to talk about that one later.
Okay.
How would you pronounce that name there? Vratislav. How would you say the last name? You might be better with the Eastern European name.
Karpisek? I don't know.
Yeah, that's how I said. Yep. Anyway, he's a dude who's reached out to me before, and just given encouragement. Some really long, nice messages. It was actually at the start of this year, 16th of February, where we chatted for the first time. And yeah, he sent in a very nice PayPal amount, $31.15 to the book reviews channel, which, that's like 2 months of the audio hosting. So very much thank you for that. But he actually also had a question related to, it was kind of on this topic.
Okay.
And so he's going to compile me a little list of favorites, but he was also, could you share your ideas on teaching literature and the role of literature in schooling generally? I've heard you talking about in one of the recent episodes. It could be an interesting perspective, which I largely share, about the way I was taught about books in school. Made me drop reading for a few years. So yeah, that was something that
very
happened
similar
to you. Something inherently wrong about being forced to read books you don't want to read, but on the other hand, how are you supposed to learn about what constitutes the literary canon and classics if you never attempt to read any? What usually killed my interest were not the books, but the endless list of facts about the authors providing no value whatsoever. So this is maybe an argument on the other case, which is like, just facts, boring, fucking boring. I don't want to read this.
Well, I think he's saying of the author. Is he saying of the author in particular, I guess? Because you know how sometimes it's I don't know if he's meaning the context of literary learning and schooling and then you having to learn about the author themselves.
No, so it wasn't endless list of facts about the authors. I guess that is a portion to it. Although I got to say, when we were doing Shakespeare, I don't ever remember learning much about Shakespeare himself.
Yeah, neither.
So I thought...
I probably would have found that more interesting, to be actually frank with you.
yeah, learn some history actually. But this is one thing where it is like, okay, I was going to talk about the fiction versus non-fiction books. The reason I probably read more fiction nowadays is I probably get more truth from it. Maybe some. It's not a fact about life, because a fact is usually related to an event. Like, this thing happened. It's a. Is it a fact that I'm trying to think that green is the best color? No, that's an opinion. But you could do a study, a survey of the world and find out, green is the most popular color. More people say green is the best color than other people do. But that's one of those ones where it's like, yeah, but even if that is a fact in the sense of that statistic, I still don't think it would be right to say green is the best color, because that's green is the best color to the majority of people is perhaps the way you would want to say that. Whereas a lot of these fiction books, I think you'll find really interesting things about humanity, psychology, which aren't facts. They're definitely not facts, but they're perhaps truths and learnings. And but you got to be searching for them yourself. You can't be force fed them. So.
Well, and see, this is, and we'll get back to it because I think I'm going to answer that particular question better. But So what's a gigantic story that you could go and read and take a lot of learning? Odysseus.
Yep. Some people get.
Yeah.
Me personally, I didn't get that much from it.
Whatever. Put in here some large tale with a lot of learnings.
War and Peace, if you want. Tolstoy. It was a large book.
So I guess
probably Les Miserables. I haven't read that, but
and you're more or less at home. You tell me which is the better. Is it better? I guess investment of time to go and read those books or insert form of information that you absorb that might take 15 to 20 hours, and then you absorb it very much directly, foundationally. You get all the information. You take your own notes. And there's benefit to that. Like both of these have benefit. Or you offload perhaps that insight seeking, learning, gathering from somebody else who's done it, aka someone does a book review on it, or someone does a analysis of a conversation that happened at 7 hours and boils it down for you in 15 minutes. And then you absorb that instead. And yes, you have to then take it with a little bit of their opinion and peppering in with their personality and how they bring it about. But then you get all those insights and learnings. There's goods and bads of both of those. And honestly, like, gun to my head, I go, well, it is good to, because I do this, aka Ryan Holiday, he summarizes a lot of various stories and ideas and, like, what you'd say, like autobiographies of people into very, acute things that map out to a particular skill or idea. And I think that's good. You're not going to get the full picture unless you go and see it yourself. But the investment of time in that is pretty significant.
He's got a book on parenting, doesn't he?
He does. I wouldn't say a book on parenting per se.
Okay.
It's one of those where a chapter per day for the whole year, and he'll put some sort of concept and then relate that back to parenthood in some way, shape, or form.
Okay. Have you read that?
Let's just say I've read 3/4 of all the pages.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So it's not a book. It's
one of those where you just kind of like, you'll 25th of June. Okay, open up to 25th of June and you'll just read that particular one. Sure, you could read every single page like a book, I guess. I'm just not incentivized to do it.
I read 12 Rules for Life when that came out, pretty shortly after it came out. And this was probably like peak Jordan Peterson mania, I guess. That would have been 2017, 2018.
That's the other thing.
Probably 2018 was when I actually bought it, just before I left to travel. And I remember reading the book and being pretty disappointed, actually. And I think it's because if there is someone who is expressing ideas now, and I've already kind of heard of them, I'm more likely to enjoy their stuff. If I've already heard of them, and it's probably because they're a really good communicator verbally, or perhaps through interpretive dance, I don't fucking know. Like maybe that was what captured Jordan Peterson, all his subtle movements. When they try and put it in book form, those skills that make them a great verbal communicator aren't. Then it's not the same as being a good editor, a blog writer, for example, or getting things in text. I think they're pretty divorced. Is there anyone I know of who I could say is a really great communicator verbally and in the written form? None come to mind.
Yeah, there's only two in my mind, like right off the bat that I can think of.
Yeah, and so, Chris Williamson's gonna write a book, from what I heard. Not a chance in fucking hell I'm ever gonna read that, because almost certainly it's not gonna be good. It's not gonna the skills that made him good at what he does now aren't going to transfer over.
See, I would disagree there. But I only disagree because I get the weekly newsletter that he sends out. I don't know if he himself writes them all or if it's AI helped or whatever, but I've been seeing them for quite a few years, and the man writes really well.
Okay.
But that's well for a newsletter. That might not necessarily translate to a book, but there is some bits and bobs in there that I go, holy shit, that's really well written. That's differently written than what you'd expect it to be.
Sure. Put it this way. I don't think any of Tim Ferriss's, Chris Williamson, Andrew Huberman's, any one of their books, I doubt they're going to be very relevant in 50 years' time. They're so, I doubt they're going to be something that people would go back to and go, man, this was ahead of its time. There's a lot of wisdom in here. This is, it's a classic. I just very, very much doubt that. Could be me just hating on them for being I'm
just trying to think of
in a
like
hating mood, perhaps.
A book in the early 2000s or something like one of the like a relatively recent book in the years. That's going to be freaking
something like Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Workweek has a chance, just because I think that captured a kind of bit of a zeitgeist. It could be like a cult classic. In that he was one of the first people to go, the internet has changed a lot of things and you can utilize software to escape the rat race and to make yourself productive. I actually haven't read that book, funnily enough. I probably should, just to see if that's actually what that is. That's kind of the impression I had of it. So I could see that one as being capturing a moment of time, perhaps, of just a thought that people had not entered into their heads yet, of like, holy shit, I could actually not need to work a 50-hour work week or 100-hour work week, whatever it is, to achieve financial freedom. So perhaps one like that. But is it going to have the same impact that the top 100 books as voted by X book publishing company or whatever, is it going to have the same impact of like a War and Peace?
We say this, and I guess this probably gets a little bit into this
opinion. Opinion right here.
This gets into the context like of that question around literacy and schooling. What might happen from when we were young, and I guess in the past 100, 200 years, I guess books or newspapers or other forms of media, and we've talked about it in a couple of podcasts ago, that, that was the general way to consume things. And so there is reasonability that the things that we go like, oh yeah, that was a really great thing to read, Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, anything from the Stoics that are generally good. Think of all the great poems or writings of fiction and non-fiction. No, not so much non-fiction, but mostly like fiction that have come out last 100 years, 200 years or so. Wonderful. Yes, when you look up, these are the top 100 books, you'll get a lot of those ones where it's like, oh yeah, those are great reads from a long time ago, but holds relevant. Might that change? And it gets to that question of literacy for schooling, in 30-year time, are we going to see a generation that's not really reading much of books anymore necessarily?
I think people have claimed that for a while, and it hasn't come true.
Materialized?
Yeah. I think with the advent of TV, of radio, books are going to go, no one's going to consume the books anymore because the kids are fascinated by radio and technology and things like that. As far as I'm aware, there's probably more reading going on now than there has been in the past, just because the access via Kindle and things like that are.
What do you reckon? What do you reckon it'd be? Do you reckon it'd be more or less?
I think it would be more. But that how are you going to decide that? Because literacy rates are certainly improved now compared to 50 years ago. So I'm not sure what the best metric of that is, but I don't think the book industry, the reading industry, perhaps, I don't think has gone into a decline in that sense.
So here's just some random global trends to disprove Kyrin's point.
Sure. In
2021, American adults averaged 16.8 minutes of reading per day, a 26% decrease from 2005's 22.8 minutes. And again, 22.8 to 16, it's not a... Well, yes, I'll note it is a decrease. I guess it's still happening.
What were they? Yeah, I guess the argument would be I'd like to know books rather than just reading, because that could have just been news, right? They could have been reading news on the internet, and now they're just getting it in a podcast form, for example. Or
another one just from an Australian context, from the ABS, Australian Bureau of Statistics, for 2020-2021 time use survey indicated there's a decline in reading for pleasure across generations, and then another one for youth was decline in reading for pleasure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there, and another one from Scotland, 4.4% decrease. Now, these are articles, and yes, some of these are from statistics. How like absolutely certain they are, I still think there's going to be a trend where there is more of a wanting to get into other forms of information, but like, I don't think the reading will go away completely. I'm not definitely suggesting that at all. But it does differ, or makes change of what will become the literacy pieces of work that, you know, are said for school children to go read. Maybe it won't change. Maybe it won't change at all. That it's like, it's still, you know, Mockingbird and Shakespeare and whatever else you want.
The latest version of Looking for Alibrandi, whatever the fuck that is.
If you had to go through that again, what would have, to the question, what would you have changed to make it a little bit better, at least for you?
So my dad was an English teacher, high school English teacher. So this was his forte, you know, forcing kids to read books. And I was chatting with him probably this last year, just like, is this a good thing? What's the point of doing this? And his argument was always, it's not about the book itself, and this is probably getting towards what Vratislav was complaining about, or didn't like, was the extra details related to the side. You've got to learn about the author. What was the author feeling? Why? You know, whatever the Looking for Alibrandi's author was, her growing up in Afghanistan, how did that regime affect her writing? What was the internal thoughts going on when she put this character in this situation? And it's you know, all this shit that it's actually not related to the book. Now you're talking about a person who wrote the book. What are we doing here? Like, what's the point of this? And Dad was always saying, there's no objective measure in English. You're just trying to determine, is this kid able to kind of use abstract thinking, connect thoughts, and then put that out in a coherent manner, which is persuasive. He kind of viewed it as like, this kid's trying to convince me of something, and I don't really care what they're trying to convince me of. Can they just do it in a persuasive manner?
That's a good way.
And so it actually had nothing to do with the book itself or the subject. It wasn't about fact nor opinion, and this is, you know, it's kind of well known. English is not one of the hard sciences. It's in the humanities, so it is open to interpretation. Everyone's opinion is valid. Yay.
Sure.
And this is probably a thing that I didn't like, maybe Vratislav didn't, which is like, no, I like maths. I like that there's one answer and you either get it right or you get it wrong. And it's like a yes or no sort of thing. People's brains are wired differently. Yeah, that's fine. So I think the thing would be, if that was the kind of outcome. Now, look, my dad's probably a little bit of an outlier in terms of how he approached teaching, learning, and I certainly know that he wasn't the favored among the teachers in the staff room. Let's put it that way. Okay. So, he had a dislike of bureaucracy, like I do, more tolerance than I do, because he continued to work there for however long. So, maybe his grading style was actually inappropriate. I'm not sure. But let's say you've got, you know, my dad as a teacher. Therefore, if it's nothing to do with the book itself, why can't the kid bring something they're actually interested in and then write about that? So if they're really interested in, you know, speed running, speed games, and speed running games, why can't they, you know, do some research on Summoning Salt YouTube channel, who goes over the history of these sorts of things, and then write something about that? Or, you know, why does it need to be about a textual based thing, perhaps? or if it needs to be like, no, you have to do it about a book. Why can't it be this? Well, then you get into all these things where it's like, okay, but the teacher hasn't read the book, so they can't read. You can't expect a teacher to read 30 different books that kids are all bringing in, and then having to decide if the kid's actually making a convincing argument or if they're just literally just inventing shit out of nowhere and things like that. So yeah, it's probably, honestly, it's more to do with the way of teaching, the school structure rather than English,
I would say so.
I would say.
Part of me would actually say I would disagree with the bringing of, because I was just playing it in my mind there. If the intent is, okay, we're going to learn about, say, whatever context, Egyptians, whatever, some time period, and you go, oh, you could read this book, and actually you can go and watch this video and just analyze what the video says and then take that in your notes. Then the outcome from that is learning about the particular piece. So if that's the objective, yeah, maybe there are other ways. And as the years goes on and things change in the way that we consume information, I'd say go for it. Just do the best thing, the best way that you could obtain that information. Again, I think we're moving to a world that is not nice to have, just in case information, but it's just in time information. AKA, you don't need to just be storing loads of information in your brain where you can gather a lot of those statistics and details very quickly. AKA, all these statistics I just pulled up, AI, right? AI helped me just bring all those articles in a very quick manner. I didn't have to go and do half an hour of research prior to get those details. And again, could some of them, you put some little caveats and boundaries around how confident you are in the things that you're finding, but it's more just in time as opposed to just in case. But there is an aspect to, and specifically to literate, I'd say hard things, hard concepts. There is imbued within that a level of skill set, the aspects of discipline and plenty of other things where it is good to have to kind of grit or work your way through stories, items of work, because in that you actually find a lot of learnings to do that. But I say that from an opinion that I would find that interesting, but it would probably turn off a lot of people if you actually made it even more challenging to read books. Looking at it from my past and thinking about how, okay, I've got a whole set of books, not like any of the no ridiculously difficult philosophical / old classic books realistically on my bookshelf, but to a younger kid, some of them are going to be more challenging than others for sure. And one of the things that have made me think is I just don't think that it's gamified enough. It's not playful enough for kids. It would be, I think that it would be fun. And so maybe this would be fun, say for my daughter or for other people, in that make almost levels to books. And you'd go, these are your introductory style books. And it could be
they have that already.
Your kids' fictions and stuff like that.
They've already got ones like that. The Choose Your Own Adventure and Goosebumps, for example. Those are gamified.
No, sorry. Yes, that's gamified in that way. Sorry. What I mean is whole broad bands of levels to books. And so what I mean by that, I'll just make it up on the spot. But
a book that, so for example, I accidentally read, what was it? Thomas Hardy's, a Thomas Hardy book, and I read the kid version of it, and I did a review on it, not realizing it was the kid version. Oh. And I was just like, this is a kind of random, stupid book. I expected more depth from this.
I got you. I get what you mean.
So it's like the same book,
something
but
like
then
that.
there's the hard version.
Correct. So and the crazy thing is, the reason I'm thinking this because you can do this with AI in a lot of ways now. In fact, where was it? Oh yeah, it is. I'm pretty sure it's OpenAI's new iteration of their dual platform utilization is with a lot of topics that you create, especially blogger content related. They now have, even though I was doing this a lot in the prompts that I was using, but they have a slider bar now, so we can quickly change whether you want it from kindergarten to PhD to master's level to high school level in all of the information that's created. So it's just easy, I guess, to do that, but I would usually do that in a prompt format. But pulling it that way into just books in general, it would be nice if you want to know about a particular topic to school kids, and let's say the topic that they want to learn about is, let's just go the difficulties that Aboriginals had or challenges in the mid 1800s, something to that effect. Now, step away with why the hell that particular topic is something super important to be learned over something else. I'm not going to debate whatever. That's opinions based. However, I'd go, it would be fun if you put them in rankings, like, introductory level are these sort of books. Intermediate levels are, these ones. But again, I'd recommend starting at the beginning levels, something to that effect that just gamifies it a little bit more, so that maybe some of Shakespeare's plays and books, maybe some of them and the really introductory level, and maybe you can include videos, movies, like Romeo and Juliet's movie version of whatever that is that we used to watch in school. That it was
with the where they had guns.
Yeah. So I can't remember specifically what.
I think it was just called Romeo and Juliet. But it was
those might be like, hey, intro level just to get your feet wet. But if you're game, if you want to get to intermediary and master level, these are the things. We wouldn't recommend you do this. Maybe that would help out some. It would still turn away some people. In any case, I just go, there's more contextual ways I think you could probably bring literacy to kids, as opposed to just going blanket book, analyze, bring it back to me. Yeah, it can be more interactive than that.
Is there slightly tangential, but have you got any opinions on what's it called when you take a kid out of school and homeschool them? Homeschooling. Aside any debates about the socialization and things like that, is there any? So let's just say, wipe that to the side. Would you think they would learn better at here versus at school? And I suppose the question is also, say that they didn't have to, you get to choose what kind of book they can read, or they get to choose, you allow them to choose what kind of book they have to read, and they have to do an assignment on, or some sort of text to prove that they can be persuasive. Is there any value in them reading the same book that other kids have had to read? The shared experience. We've all got the shared experience of Shakespeare. The only thing I can really take from that is I now have a connection with basically anyone, because we can all bitch about how stupid it was to read Shakespeare in high school. Is that a good shared experience to have with someone? I think
I think the challenge with just specific, like, to the original question, I think that should it be homeschool versus in school? I don't think that the shared experience brings that much extra. I think you would not read Shakespeare in a homeschool context. You'd read probably other things that either they would bring or have more joy. One of the challenges that I would say is that as you age, so if anyone's listening and you're like quite young, like you're really, really young, I can only put myself into that position, but it's also, I guess, partly an opinion because I'm older. You just will not absorb some of the really hardcore quotes or ideas of suffering unless you are, one, a really unfortunate, individual who've had a terrible childhood. Two, you're just not old enough. You're just not old enough at that point to, I think, really absorb some of those items. As much as, and the reason I say that is that I've read books lately, or in the last couple of years, where they will reference or have a quote from Shakespeare. And man, it's like, fuck, that's a deep fucking quote. That's a deep understanding. There is no way in fucking hell that when I was 16 years old reading Shakespeare, I would have picked up that quote and been like, man, that's deep. I get it. I wouldn't have gotten it. I just, like, we all saw it. We just saw it as like, what the hell is this story? This is boring. What's going on? Boring. There's, and even in school, you're like, oh yeah, you can pick up these contexts and ideas. But that's kind of the equivalent of me reading at 15 years old a book about parenthood, right? Like, you can get the idea, but I'm telling you this right now, until you become a dad or a mum, you don't have any idea. You do not have any idea. In fact, I've had, just prior to being a dad, I've looked after some kids. And I know friends who've looked after kids who I now speak to. And I go, they kind of compare like, oh yeah, I know what it means. No, you don't. No, you fucking don't. You have no idea the difference that it is.
That's why people hate parents, because they keep
it's very different. But again, this goes with dogs, right? Someone told you before you have a dog, oh, there's this you got to do and you got to do. Now it's a smaller scale, But no, you don't get it until you kind of go through something that's equivalent. I think there's a challenge in just full stop trying to get kids or get teenagers to absorb some context, which is just not at the ready for their context.
They don't need to as well. I don't think anyone needs to. I don't think anyone needs to learn about the hardness of life.
We talked about this with dogs.
Suffering.
We talked about it with dogs last time. You know, it sounds cabot to say, but if you had a dog when you were young and then it died when you were a teenager, you're going to learn a lot of stuff, I think, from mortality in that space, right? You're going to learn a lot about mortality and the finiteness of life, etc. If you didn't have that, and if you're young and if you're fortunate, no one around you has died and everything's okay, maybe your great-grandparents have died, fine, and you read a book like Man's Search for Meaning, I don't think it's going to resonate as strongly as you age. And part of that, I can tell you, I've read Man's Search for Meaning on and off now for 6 years, something to that effect. The first time I read it wasn't like the second time I read it, wasn't like the third time I read it, wasn't like the fourth time I read it. And I wouldn't say that I'm, again, learning a gigantic, big, different thing every time, but it's, oh, it makes more sense. Oh, I get this. Oh, okay, I can see this level of suffering or this comparison. Again, I'm not even close to that level that it's expressed in the book or in a lot of other books, but it makes sense as you explore more and experience more in life. So, to that point on literacy, or at least any content in general, you'd have to be you have to be careful on what you try to get them to absorb.
All I'm getting from this is that Juan wants everyone to read that book and learn about it.
You got to read, yeah. But and this is why I mean the levels of it, because I would love to, for my daughter, I would want to say to her, my favorite book is Man's Search for Meaning. But I'd go, that book, in whatever order, ranking, gamification, would be like, that's one of the hardest books to read. And it would be like, or I shouldn't call it hard, it's like the most complex to take, the absorb the knowledge from. Now, one part of it is for a kid, I think, that goes like, oh, it's a challenge. Like, I want to go and read it. What the hell? Why can't I read it? But it's kind of like classifying in there are classics, there are items of work that you need pre-loaded up information. Otherwise, you are going to think, what the hell is going on here?
Sure.
This is reality.
I'm going to end with this little quote that I grabbed from the book Devil Take the Hindmost. And so it's funny, like, even history is not free to be explored at leisure. There's still not facts even about things that were far in the past. Mm-hmm. And so there was this quote from here. The relationship between the crash and the Great Depression, so this is talking about the Roaring '20s and then the Great Depression that followed from that, is one of the most keenly debated issues in economic history, because the debate is politically charged concerning whether markets should ultimately be controlled by governments or left to their own devices. It will never be resolved to the satisfaction of all parties. As Roosevelt showed, political capital could be earned by insinuating a causal link between the crash and the economic crisis. Then it's got talking about like Friedman's assertion the stock market collapse did not lead to this, did not cause this. And it's one of those ones where it's like, okay, you'd think by now that you'd have would be set in stone. The stock market crashing leading. Does this have any connection with the Great Depression that followed? And it's still not. It's still widely up for debate even to today. So there's certain facts and opinions which are very much submerged, entwined in each other, and I don't think can be extricated. Which was also why I really like the book The Tyranny of Words by Stuart Chase, because I think he just nailed it. There's certain topics which are just so inherently screwed, that you're not going to be able to get a good idea of what the hell is going on and what people mean. Politics is one, religion is one, sex is one. You know, the things you avoid on the first date, that's the big three, is the general rule. And there's a reason for that, because it's just people have no idea what the fuck they're talking about. They talk past each other. Communication's almost impossible. Words lose their meaning, or they have different meaning to other people. They've got 17 different meanings, each unique to the person who's hearing it. It's hard. Yeah.
I honestly, I don't even know how to summarize that or what we've said around the opinions and facts aspect of it. But I'm going to give you my opinion, or I guess my viewpoint on some of these things is
Sure.
that honestly, stay away from anything that's opinion based unless you just really enjoy it or you have a way to verify and prove how much of that opinion you can take on.
This is probably more around the idea of what's true and real. If it's fun, fuck, just read it. You know, it's
Exactly, because then fiction, a lot of fiction that can be not real, but it can be a lot of.
There's non-fiction like that as well. You know, I don't know how non-fiction this is, but the don't tell my mum I work on the rigs. She thinks I'm a piano player in a whorehouse, something like that. That book is non-fiction, but I don't know about that, you know. But it was kind of a fun read, very clickbaity title.
Yeah.
I wouldn't actually recommend reading that.
No.
But you know, that's one of those ones where even non-fiction can be fun. It's certainly, and if you get juiced up and jacked up by reading. What's some of like the politically charged ones that came out recently? I know there was some in the States where it was about like white people and how racist white people are, and
Really?
I can't remember that. It was one of those books.
I'm so away from that lens, obviously, that I just have no clue
but,
of.
You know,
which I'm glad.
If you enjoy that, if you enjoy your favorite YouTuber and they come out with a book and you just want to read it for fun, like fucking.
True.
Go
Yeah.
Enjoy.
I guess depend on what. Figure out what you're optimizing for, what you're willing to spend your time on as well. Don't go waste your time, folks. There's not much of it.
Sure.
While you're there, the Immortal Lights. Again, from a Boostagram perspective, if you do want to support the show,
Very sad puppy. We do need some support coming in.
you can do it obviously through the PayPal. We've already mentioned it as well. There's some links that's going to be all available all around the place. Boostagram Zone.
In the show notes.
Correct. Boostagram Zone, you're able to send through some sort of Satoshis with a message attached as well. You can do that on all the good platforms out there. Fountain.
Fountain's a good one.
Fountain, we'll say that. Castamatic. You can go to our mereimmortals.com/support to go and see all the various ways, all the videos. That video is still hold valid of how to actually go about and do that in terms of supporting. I believe
Probably
so.
for the moment.
Yeah, but again,
I might have to take that down.
Stuff goes quickly. In any case, feel free to go there. Any questions on the?
I didn't check.
Moment,
I do
just in
have.
case?
I actually took bulk notes for next week's topic, which I've already decided.
Oh, you've
on.
already noted. Okay.
Yeah,
Bam.
because I've had a real interesting YouTube binge recently. It was just a bunch of stuff coming up.
Okay.
Which I found really interesting. So next week's topic is going to be about game economies.
Game economies.
In particular, I probably should label that video game economies.
So you're talking about like Minecraft, RuneScape, Blue Hat. The fact that you can buy $30 shoes now in
crypto games, things like that. Yeah, there's. I went down a bit of a world. One. Just mentioned the blue party hat because we have a shared YouTube account, so I assume that's why you set that up. No,
I didn't see that, but that's the only thing I know of RuneScape of the hats.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So well, there we go. It'll be a good topic. Okay. So that'll
game economics,
video game in particular economies, and
why some of them don't work and some of them do seem to work.
Yeah. And no, I think that's it for today.
Okay.
Awesome.
Me and Morlights, thank you very much. Take care wherever you are in the world. Thank you for being here for the live. And if you're not, feel free to join in on the 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Sundays. For now,
correct.
Me and Morlights, one out.
Kyrin out.
Good. Welcome back, Mere Immortals. This is the Mere Immortals podcast. You've got Juan here.
Kyrin here.
And this is the 15th of December. We've got Musings as well, Mere Immortals. Now, today, the topic, it was something that I picked up, which is going to be opinions versus facts.
Deciphering opinion from facts.
Deciphering opinion
Why
versus
new books
facts.
fail the Kyrin test.
Oh, no. Why? Yeah. Which, look, we'll talk about why they fail, why they might not be good, maybe some things about literacy, etc.
Exactly. So this is a re-recorded intro, just because the started one suffered a
malfunction,
a little malfunction. But we're gonna just dive into where my little monologue at the start here. So enjoy.